Good morning. Welcome to RSBN Live. I'm Matthew Alvarez. Good morning to those of you, especially out there on the West Coast. If you're waking up this early, 6 a.m., and watching us, you are a loyal viewer. Thank you so much for doing so. And for all of you around the country, whether watching this live or on replay, thank you so much for streaming in RSBN Live as we have a full slate of coverage today. Myself and Robert McNeely will be covering both events in the sense of the amount of coverage coming up. You'll see throughout the day here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. You're looking live at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Today, of course, awaiting the speech from the Vice President JD Vance at the Munich Security Conference. That's a meeting in Washington. That's slated for about 29 minutes from now, so we'll go there and bring that to you live. And I'll share with you a few more programming notes in just a second with all of the live coverage today at Right Side at Wednesday, May 7th, 9:02 a.m. All right, so let's go to Colonial Metals Group, one of our great sponsors here at the network. freegoldguide.com/RSBN is the website. freegoldguide.com/RSBN is the place to go for a free info kit on gold and silver. Also, you know, you read about and you see China doing various things out there, including dumping U.S. bonds, grabbing some prime American farmland, and rolling out that new digital currency. So they're really trying to mess with our dollar. But at the end of the day, whether our dollar has the value it is now or goes up or goes down, having gold or silver as a backup plan, always a good idea with your retirement or your savings. President Trump, of course, is genius because he's letting retirement savers like you protect your life savings with gold at a 100% tax-free rate. So that's pretty awesome right there. So go to freegoldguide.com/RSBN for more information from Colonial Metals Group. All right, so other than the speech from the Vice President this morning, we have a lot going on today, including a White House press briefing a little bit later. We'll also hear from DOJ and the FBI, the two top people there, Pam Bondi and Kash Patel. That's actually coming up after this JD Vance speech. And then a lot more coverage throughout the day. So stick with us here. You can check on Rumble. You can check on various social platforms, our website, and everything for the schedule of what's going on. As you can see on Rumble with the thumbnail says coming up, you'll be able to check it out as we have a lot of coverage again today. Speaking of the Vice President, he and his wife attended the evening parade at the Marine Barracks in Washington, D.C. It's quite the experience. We're going to show you that video in just a bit. And then, of course, there's another video out there that we were playing yesterday. And I don't know if it was the right video or not, but I want to make sure we get it right because it has to do with our military. The DOD, Military Appreciation Month, is this month. And really, it should be every month, just like, Thanksgiving, I think, should be every month, because why not thank God and why not thank our military and all of the other why not thank type of situations out there. How about Mother's Day, Father's Day? I mean, really every day is our time to be grateful and thankful for all of these different items and people and things in life. So we'll get to that video with the Marine Barracks in just a minute. I actually, years ago, attended this Marine Band parade at the Marine Barracks in Washington. It's awesome. They have, with their guns, they're able to flip the guns around and throw them to each other, and then the music's amazing, and it's just a really powerful experience. So we do have a video of that with the Vice President and his wife, Usha, that attended that event recently. We'll go to that when it's ready, and then we'll go to that military appreciation video when it's ready as well. All right, so we know that today we have a number of live events to get to. We'll get to more information about that in a second. Let's go to the Vice President, JD Vance, and his wife, who attended that Marine Barracks band. Check out this experience.
Good evening and welcome to the oldest post of the Corps, Marine Barracks, Washington, D.C., celebrating over 6 decades of performing evening parades here in our nation's capital. It is a privilege for Marine Barracks, Washington, D.C. to have as our guest of honor for this evening, the Vice President of the United States, the Honorable JD Vance. Tonight, we celebrate the pride, professionalism, and esprit de corps that are hallmarks of this barracks and the Marines who have distinguished these hallowed grounds for over 2 centuries. They represent all Marines throughout the world who embody our Corps' values of honor, courage, and commitment.
and I do believe that that is available to the public to watch the Marine Band at the Marine Barracks in Washington, D.C. It's quite the great event to just go and experience there with our United States Marine Corps. So if you get a chance, if you're in Washington, look up the Marine Barracks in Washington and see when the Marine Band is performing, and you may be able to go to one of those events at night. It's the evening parade, and it's, again, an awesome experience, having been there myself. All right, so we're getting ready for the Vice President to speak at the Munich Security Conference. That's in Washington, D.C. A bit later today, we'll hear from Kash Patel and Pam Bondi, as the DOJ and FBI will be having a press conference. And then also another press conference for the White House with Carolyn Levitt. And then we have more coverage as the day goes on. So you'll be able to check it all out right here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. Let's go to All Family Pharmacy. This place is awesome. If you're looking for ivermectin or other medications out there, you can get it with this great company, allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. I mean, imagine, needing a medication and being told you can't have it, not because it's out of stock, but because someone decided you shouldn't have access. It's already happened, and we don't want it to happen again. This is your answer to all that, allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. When others make it complicated, All Family Pharmacy makes it simple. Just the medications you want when you need them without jumping through any hoops. They have ivermectin, as you see on the screen there. They have methylene blue, along with many more medications. These are the kind of medications your local pharmacy won't touch and your doctor won't even mention, most of them, right? But you know that they work, and you've heard that they work. I mean, I have it personally, ivermectin as well, just in case if I need it. They also have antibiotics, your everyday medications, and get this, 200 essential medications to keep your home stocked and your family ready. So all you have to do is order online. Their doctors handle the prescription. You'll fill out some medical paperwork online. It's not that they're not going to just send you some prescriptions, but as long as you fill out the paperwork and you can get the ones that you want, you can get that shipped right to your door, even overnight. No insurance needed, no hassle, just peace of mind. Keep your medicine cabinet ready before you're left without options. Go to allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN and use that RSBN 10 promo code. That'll give you quite the discount for this great company, allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. All right, so 9:08, Wednesday, May 7th, looking live at the White House there, looking nice and sunny there in D.C. on this Wednesday. Looking forward to hearing from the Vice President, JD Vance, and also looking forward to hearing from Pam Bondi and Kash Patel, as the DOJ and FBI will hold a press conference. I don't know any details about what the press conference is about at this point, so we'll have to watch together and listen. And then later today at 1 o'clock Eastern, Carolyn Levitt will hold a White House press briefing that we'll have in its entirety. Also, May is Military Appreciation Month. The Department of Defense, they posted a video on X just yesterday. We want to air that for you. The President also posted this on Truth Social. As soon as I hear that's ready to go, we will go to the DoD video all about appreciating our military, our United States military. And speaking of our military, the 250th celebration for our U.S. Army is actually next month, June 14th. Looking forward to sharing some more details that I learned yesterday, thanks to our crew here who passed it along to me. So I'll share that with you in just a second. How about right after this video? So let's go to the Department of Defense video for May being Military Appreciation Month. Take a look.
May is Military Appreciation Month, a time to honor the courage, sacrifice, and unwavering dedication of our nation's service members. For over 75 years, the U.S. Air Force Reserve has played a vital role in defending our nation, standing ready at a moment's notice to support global missions and domestic operations. Reserve citizen airmen represent the best of both worlds. balancing civilian careers with military service while bringing unique skill sets and perspectives to the fight. From disaster response to strategic deterrence, from cyber defense to medical care, the Air Force Reserve delivers unmatched capability, resilience, and commitment. This month and every month, we salute the extraordinary men and women of the Air Force Reserve and all who wear the uniform. Your service strengthens our force, our communities, and our nation.
To all 6 branches, thank you so much for what you do for our country, to the National Guard and to everyone involved in law enforcement and keeping our borders safe and all of the work that's happening out there. You know, my dad used to be a detective in the police and for the county, and I understand law enforcement and definitely, you know, I'm very appreciative of what's happening out there for our country when it comes to law and order. You won't hear that again from the mainstream media, but having some buddies as well that are state troopers, that kind of thing, definitely respect to the people that want to protect and serve our country, whether it is local police or the county sheriff's office or Customs Border Protection, on and on and on. Even the state's various bureaus of investigation. You know, there's so many different facets out there, but thanks to the military, thanks to all of our law enforcement out there, we appreciate you and we thank you for what you do for our country. And yeah, can't say enough about it. 9:12 a.m., Wednesday, May 7th. Let me get to one more point. You remember I was talking about June 14th, so next month is the 250th celebration for the United States Army. So there's this huge parade, huge event going on. Specifics shared with me just yesterday, as first detailed by the AP, call for about 6,600 soldiers, 150 vehicles, 50 helicopters to follow a route from Arlington, Virginia to the National Mall, starting at the Pentagon, involving, again, a number of military vehicles. Fireworks will follow. So that answers all of my questions. I was wondering yesterday, what are the details? Well, there they are. It's going to be in Virginia and in D.C., and it's on June 14th, Flag Day, President Trump's birthday, the U.S. Army celebration for 250 years. This is almost a preview to what it's going to be like for our celebration of our country's 250th, which is going to be July 4th, 2026. So we're going to get a little kind of a sneak peek of what it's going to be like. I'm sure it's going to be a very large parade and event, of course, next July. But this one here coming up next month, in just about a month and 7 days from now, will be awesome. I'm sure we'll have it. We will have it actually right here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. It is on a Saturday. It'll feel like almost Rally Day, but Rally Day for our United States Army. Please tune in June 14th. Also, speaking of some dates, and then we'll get to a sponsor, on May 13th through the 16th, so in just next week, President Trump will be going through the Middle East, 3 different countries, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. We're also waiting to see what the announcement is from President Trump. He said there's a big announcement coming, a positive one, so we'll wait to see what that is. And then on May 24th, the president will be speaking at West Point in New York to the Army, to the grads there, on May 24th. So a commencement speech. So we'll look forward to that coverage here at the network as well. All right, so angelpace.com out of Spring, Texas. Great sponsor, great product, and all you have to do is go to angelpace.com. You can use the RSBN promo code. That'll get you the discount as well. And it's not only the Miracle Cream. There's other products on there as well. So check it out, angelpace.com. Longtime sponsor here at Right Side. Great patriotic group of people out of Spring, Texas. They hire military veterans. So why not give back in a way too, but also get a great product in return. So angelpace.com is the website. 9:15 this morning. Again, we are awaiting the Vice President JD Vance, who will speak at that Munich Security Conference meeting. That's in Washington, D.C. So that is first up on tap for today's live coverage. Then we'll head to the DOJ and the FBI for a press conference there with Pam Bondi and Kash Patel. That coverage starts at 10 a.m. Eastern. So in about 44 minutes from now. But what we may do, depending on when this speech is over, we may have one stream for the vice president, and there may be another stream starting for Kash Patel and Pam Bondi. Now, that event, that press conference specifically, starts at 10:30 a.m. Our coverage pre-show starts at 10. So just basically stick with us when it comes to Rumble. You know, you just look and you see, hey, this is the link that they're live on right now, and then we'll continue throughout the day. And then after the FBI DOJ press conference, we'll go to right there again, the Washington, D.C. White House there, and see the press briefing with Carolyn Levitt. And again, there's a number of other events live later today right here on Right Side Broadcasting Network, including a broadcast where we have a press conference. The Fed Chair Powell will have a live event. And then also Chief Justice John Roberts will have a live event later. We'll be covering both of those. And then we will upload a number of events that happen as well today, as you're looking live at the Capitol and the White House on this May 7th. The president will be swearing in an ambassador, a U.S. ambassador to China. That is a video that we'll upload. So, I mean, there's so many things going on today. This is a jam-packed day of news here at Right Side Broadcasting Network. On top of that, you know, following the news cycle as well. I mean, the news cycle, most of it has to do with Washington, D.C. politics and what's happening in our country and around the world. There are some other stories that are happening out there as well as we monitor various stories, but looking forward to seeing JD Vance here. Again, he'll be speaking at the Munich Security Conference meeting in Washington, D.C., and then we'll get to a number of other live events coming up. Let's take a look at some of the latest Truth Social posts, as I do want to share with you something I thought about this morning about how we uprooted the Democrats out of that White House and replace them with the real deal, with President Trump and his team. And then I want to share a point with you in just a second. But I do want to double check any latest developments on Truth Social, on X right now, just to make sure that we're on top of the latest developments that are happening out there. As this, of course, is, as Robert McNeely so rightly puts it and coins it, is a live desk. I mean, we are live, he and I, and you know, we interview other RSBN hosts and have them on the show as well. But at the end of the day, it's called RSBN Live for a reason. We are here from the start to finish of a lot of these events. And what you'd see from other newscasts, maybe in the lamestream media, is a very pinpoint to this, to that, with some more false narratives, more fake news, you know, people that are experts in their so-called field to help prop up their fake news. You know, we're not going to have that here. It's going to be all really based in common sense and the right side of history. And that's what we're loyal to, is that truth here at Right Side Broadcasting Network. Let's go ahead and take a look here. I'm looking through a number of articles here, but I don't see anything that's very huge breaking news at this point. So we'll continue to monitor that. But let's get to that point that I was sharing just a minute ago. So we know that the Dems were uprooted by the American people, by the majority of this country. The previous fake White House is gone. The true White House is here, a government of, by, and for the people. Literally, a government of the people. President Trump is of the people, right? So we have that at the White House with the cabinet meetings and the cabinet leaders and all of the people he's hired. And yeah, so we're seeing that. What hasn't been fully uprooted is the lamestream media. They're all still there. They're spewing venom and lies. But the thing that we can do together is see that a number of people can boycott the left-wing lamestream media by simply not watching, not clicking on their articles. And instead, what you can do as an American citizen, if you are watching this network, you're already awakened to all this. You already know, okay, I don't want to watch fake news. But there's something that you can do, I believe, that really, and I'm not kidding, this isn't just about ratings or numbers, because there are conservative media options out there. We thank you for picking Right Side Broadcasting Network, because we've been there since 2015, and we've covered President Trump a lot, and we've seen a lot of great moments in time, some very difficult moments as well. But we see that President Trump will retruth articles from Right Side Broadcasting Network, or say, hey, watch RSBN. So yes, there are conservative media options, but regardless of all that, what I'm trying to say is, you have an opportunity right now to help the American people and get them off of the woke mind virus, off of the mainstream media. There are people still out there that don't know about Right Side Broadcasting Network, that don't know that there is a conservative media option out there. So you have an opportunity right now to share with your friends, your family, and tell everyone, hey, guess what? Instead of being lied to, or however you want to handle it, and instead of watching the lamestream media, you can always go ahead over to Right Side Broadcasting Network. And there's a lot of conservative media out there. There's podcasts, there's all sorts of stuff. And within your circle and within your friends and family, yes, they may already watch Right Side. But if there's one other person, literally one person, if you can do it this week in a kind, nice way, whether it's somebody at the gas station or whether it's a family member or a friend, you're literally doing your part to say, I'm not letting the fake news lie to my fellow countrymen any longer. I'm going to let them know that there are people out there that are journalists that cover the right side of history, but not only cover it, are a part of it because we believe the same thing you do. Common sense, freedom. We believe in God. We believe in having God in our schools, God in everything, because he created everything out of nothing. So why not, right? Also, we believe in the MAGA movement, which is not just President Trump, even though he created it. Making America great again is something that President Trump's doing and his cabinet leaders are doing, and anybody that's running for office or people that already are in office that stand for America first. So we're trying to get as many people as possible to be woken up. I know a lot of you are. You're loyal viewers. You wouldn't be here if you didn't know about Right Side Broadcasting, of course. Now, not everybody that's watching is on the right side of history or believes in, what President Trump's doing. Maybe some people out there, maybe you can't stand President Trump for whatever reason, or you can't stand, all of the freedom and all that. Yesterday I was looking and I saw the Democrat Socialists of America. There's this huge DSA chapter in every state, and there are people out there that literally say, we want socialism. So here's the point. To those people, if you're watching, at the end of the day, we're not coming at you saying, oh, you're bad, we're right. Well, indirectly, sometimes we say that, but what we're saying is we're trying to bridge the gap. We want you to see what it's like to just simply say, you know what? We do want to have the freedom to believe in God and talk about it. We do want law and order in this country and to not be caught up in the lies from the left wing. So again, I'll just close up this point. I thought about it this morning. I thought, you know what? The Democrats were uprooted from the White House. We have the real deal now in the true White House. Well, the mainstream media still has not been fully uprooted. That whole section of that so-called fourth establishment, the majority of media is still on the left side of history, which is the wrong side. So as you guys know that. So you really literally can do a part. Practical step could be simply, as soon as you're hearing this right now on live or on replay, is texting a friend or a family member, sending them a link to your favorite conservative media, Right Side Broadcasting Network, or there's conservative media out there. Send them a link and say, please watch this. These guys are whatever adjective you want to put in there, whatever it is. So go ahead and do that. That's your part that you can help other people turn off the mainstream media and come to the right side of history. Pretty awesome stuff. Thank you for doing so, and thank you for being a loyal viewer over the years here at Right Side. Longer than I've even been here, right? Some of you have watched since 2015. I joined in 2022. I was in the mainstream media, and I got an opportunity to get out of that, and here on Right Side now. And same thing with Robert McNeely. We are former mainstream media people that were so glad to be able to speak our mind and our heart. I'm not reading this from a prompter, and to share with you our thoughts about the country and cover, of course, this great president. And we're going to see the great Vice President JD Vance here in just a minute. So let's go to Tax Network USA, a great sponsor here at Right Side. 800-357-1415 is the number. tnusa.com/RSBN is the website. And it's all about settling back taxes, getting that peace of mind for we the people. If you have any back taxes at all, this is a great patriotic group right there, Tax Network USA. They can help you along the way to get that financial peace of mind. 800-357-1415. It's 9:25, Wednesday, May 7th. Thanks so much for streaming in with us. A lot of coverage coming up today, a full slate of coverage. I'll share with you the first 3 events that we have. The first one, of course, will be JD Vance speaking at the Munich Security Conference meeting in Washington. And then we will shift over to another stream, another broadcast with the DOJ and the FBI. So Pam Bondi and Kash Patel will be holding a press conference. We'll have that in its entirety. And then later today, not too far later today, we'll have our 12 p.m. live show that starts at that point for the 1 o'clock press conference for Carolyn Levitt. So working on some interviews for that hour. Regardless, though, it'd be great to have you join us as we continue to cover America First. That is JD Vance. Let's go to the Vice President right now in Washington.
Brochure, copy of which you'll have on the way out, about the speech and the reactions to it from around the world. This intense debate about how fundamental values, how the freedom of speech, the rule of law should be interpreted and applied continues to this day. Sure. But when we prepared for this meeting with your team yesterday, we agreed, and they agreed, that today we should try to focus on current challenges of foreign policy, sure, which confront us together. So thank you again for making yourself available. We don't have a great deal of time, so I'll not come up with a long introduction, and I just want to get us started. The first time you came to Munich, you were still a senator from Ohio. What I associate with Ohio is the Dayton Agreement 30 years ago in 1995. I was at that time actually the German negotiator. So I actually lived in Dayton, Ohio for 1 entire month. So and why is this important? Because it was through U.S. intervention, that peace was brought about in Europe, sure, in the Balkans at that time. So if I may, let me ask my first question about the U.S. and Europe. A distinguished former U.S. diplomat, Richard Holbrooke, wrote almost exactly 30 years ago in a Foreign Affairs article that the United States is and should remain a European power. Today, 30 years ago, my question is, do you think that the United States should continue to see itself as a European power? In Munich, remember, you actually said, and I quote, "We are still on the same team." Are we, and what does that mean for the U.S. presence in Europe and relationship with Europe? First question.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you, and I'm sorry my microphone apparently is broken, but we have another one, so that's good. So everybody can hear me now, right? Everybody can hear me? Great. Good. Yeah, so first of all, thrilled to be here and thrilled to have this conversation. I've been looking forward to it. And yeah, I do still very much think that the United States and Europe are on the same team. And I think that this is, sometimes I've been criticized as a hyper-realist, right? I think of foreign policy purely in terms of transactional values. What does the America get out of it? What do the rest of the world get out of it? And try to focus so purely on the transactional value of it that we ignore sometimes the humanitarian or the moral side of it. And I think at least with Europe, that's actually not a full encapsulation of my views, because I think that European civilization and American civilization, European culture and American culture are very much linked. And they're always going to be linked. And I think it's completely ridiculous to think that you're ever going to be able to drive a firm wedge between the United States and Europe. Now, that doesn't mean we're not going to have disagreements. And of course, you brought up the speech earlier. It doesn't mean that Europeans won't criticize the United States or the United States won't criticize Europe. But I do think fundamentally we have to be, and we are, on the same civilizational team. And I think obviously there's a big question about what that means in the 21st century. I think, obviously the president and I believe that it means a little bit more European burden sharing on the defense side. I think that it means that all of us, frankly, on both sides of the Atlantic have gotten a little bit too comfortable with the security posture of the last 20 years, and that, frankly, that security posture is not adequate to meet the challenges of the next 20 years. So there are a lot of ways in which this alliance will evolve and change, in the same way that the alliance evolved and changed from 1945 to 1975 and from 1975 to 2005. I do think that we're in one of these phases where we're going to have to rethink a lot of big questions, but I do think that we should rethink those big questions together. That is a fundamental belief of both me and the President. And, you mentioned this is my third time speaking with the Munich Security Conference group. Obviously, the first couple of times were in Munich. And I always remember very fondly, of course, that the very first time it was as a United States Senator representing Ohio, and I'm glad you got to spend a month in Dayton. I love Dayton. It's kind of the closest big city, if you can call it a big city, to where I grew up. But on that first panel, I was on that panel, and also David Lammy, who at the time was a lowly member in opposition, and of course now is the great foreign secretary of the United Kingdom, and he and I have become good friends. So I still think that this European alliance is very important, but I think that for it to be important and for us to be real friends with each other, and I think that we are very much real friends, we've got to talk about the big questions, and I know that's an important part of what this entire group does, so I'm glad to be here.
Great, thank you so much. And I think the message has arrived in Europe that we need to carry a significantly larger share of the burden. As you know, we are all trying to spend more. Some are spending really a lot more. Others are lagging behind a little bit, but we're moving in the right direction, I think. Let me turn to a really concrete, urgent issue, Ukraine. The Trump administration, from what we have seen in the media, etc., seems to agree with most of us in Europe that, unfortunately, Russia does not seem to be really willing to end this military confrontation. If that's the assessment, if that's our collective assessment, could you talk a little bit about U.S. strategy going forward? We all want this war to end, and let me say as a very personal comment, I think the Trump administration did the right thing by starting this process of talking to the Ukrainians, talking to the Russians, but the Russians seem not to be interested in the kind of quote-unquote deal that could be offered to them. So talk to us a little bit about how you see the next steps.
Yeah, so let me say a couple of things about this. First of all, I appreciate your kind words about the administration. Obviously, I think it was the right thing to do for us to start the process of negotiation. I think for too long, the Russians, the Ukrainians have been fighting. Obviously, there's been a lot of people dying on both sides. There's been a lot of innocent loss of life. And our view is it's absurd that you've had this war go on for so long, and the two sides aren't even talking constructively about what would be necessary for them to end the conflict. And I think that one of the things that President Trump has always been very good at, and he's gotten a lot of criticism, unfair criticism in my view, from both the American and some of the European press, is what I would call a strategic realism or a strategic insight. In other words, you don't have to agree with the Russian justification for the war, and certainly both the President and I have criticized the full-scale invasion, but you have to try to understand where the other side is coming from to end the conflict. And I think that's what President Trump has been very deliberate about, is actually forcing the Russians to say, here is what we would like in order to end the conflict. And again, you don't have to agree with it. You can think that the request is too significant, and certainly the first peace offer that the Russians put on the table, our reaction to it was, you're asking for too much, but this is how negotiations unfold. And I wouldn't say, I'm not yet that pessimistic on this, I wouldn't say that the Russians are uninterested in bringing this thing to a resolution. What I would say is right now, the Russians are asking for a certain set of requirements, a certain set of concessions in order to end the conflict. We think they're asking for too much, okay? And then obviously, the Ukrainians matter a lot. They're the other side. They're the other party, at least to the direct conflict. And we have to ask, what is the Ukrainian? What do they need in order to bring this conflict to a successful completion? And we're going to continue to have that conversation. Now, what the president has said is that he will walk away if he thinks he's not making progress. And I think that, about once every 4 or 5 weeks, you will hear some American official or sometimes multiple American officials say, this is a week where we need to make another step. And in particular, the step that we would like to make right now is we would like both the Russians and the Ukrainians to actually agree on some basic guidelines for sitting down and talking to one another. Obviously, the United States is happy to participate in those conversations, but it's very important for the Russians and the Ukrainians to start talking to one another. We think that is the next big step that we would like to take. And why does that matter? The reason it matters is because, again, I mentioned the Russians, but also the Ukrainians have also been sort of, they've put a piece of paper in our hands that says this is what we would need in order to bring this conflict to a successful resolution from our perspective. And there's a big gulf, predictably, between where the Russians and the Ukrainians are, and we think the next step in the negotiation is to try to close that gulf. We think it's probably impossible for us to mediate this entirely without at least some direct negotiation between the two, and so that's what we focus on. But I'm not yet a pessimist on this. I mean, obviously, you know, the Russians and the Ukrainians are not there yet because the fighting is still going on. You know, the Ukrainians have said they would agree to a ceasefire, a 30-day ceasefire. We appreciate that. What the Russians have said, again, you don't have to disagree with it, but it's important to understand where the other side is coming from. What the Russians have said is a 30-day ceasefire is not in our strategic interest. So we've tried to move beyond the obsession with the 30-day ceasefire and more on the what would the long-term settlement look like. And we've tried to consistently advance the ball. One final point I'd make about this, I think it probably wouldn't surprise anybody in the room, but there are a lot of people watching who are not in the room, is a frustration that we've had, frankly, with both sides, is that they hate each other so much that if you have an hour conversation with either side, the first 30 minutes are just them complaining about some historical grievance from 4 years ago or 5 years ago or 10 years ago. Look, I understand it. I understand that people don't fight wars against each other without a lot of grievance and a lot of problem, but we're trying to, as much as we can, play a constructive role in advancing the peace conversation forward. And what I'll say, just to echo something that President Trump has said many times, but I think it bears repeating, is our strong view is that the continuation of this conflict is bad for us, it's bad for Europe, it's bad for Russia, and it's bad for Ukraine. We think that if cool heads prevail here, we can bring this thing to a durable peace that will be economically beneficial for both the Ukrainians and the Russians, and most importantly, will stop the end of the destruction of human lives. I think people underappreciate this about our president here in the United States is he has a genuine humanitarian impulse about this. He hates innocent people losing their lives. He hates even soldiers losing their lives in unnecessary conflicts. He just wants the killing to stop, and that will continue to be America's policy. But obviously, as all of you have seen, we'll navigate that policy and react as the parties bring their grievances to us.
Great. Thank you very much. If I can just offer 2 footnotes to that. I think for us, Europeans living as neighbors of Ukraine and, if you wish, also as neighbors of Russia, we have begun to understand that what we're looking at here is not just the defensive war by Ukraine against the Russian aggression. It is also a confrontation that puts at risk all of European security. In other words, it's indirectly our defense also. It's not just Ukraine. And this is why we're so desperately interested in seeing that this comes to an end, hopefully. And I think the real trick for negotiations and for a conclusion of this is going to be that it's going to be lasting and not broken in the next 3, 6, or 9 months again. Let me, Mr. Vice President, since we have so little time, there are so many issues. If you allow, let me turn to another issue, China. That's a key, as we understand, a key challenge for the United States, for your foreign policy. It's also of tremendous interest for us in Europe. So the United States has defined China as the key strategic challenge going forward for coming probably many years. This has also been the justification, the reasoning when American staff members of yours tell us the United States must be much more present in Asia and will therefore need to reduce their presence, their strength, etc., in Europe. But now there are some signals in the media that the United States government, that the White House might actually be interested in a strategic deal with China, maybe even including on Taiwan. Could you talk a little bit about the China strategy of the Trump administration?
Yeah, so I haven't seen those reports that you mentioned, a strategic deal on Taiwan, so I wouldn't speak to that. I certainly would say that there has been no conversation between our governments about a strategic deal on that particular question. What we have talked about, of course, is that we cannot absorb the producer surplus of the entire world. That has been the role of the American economy for the past 30 years, in some cases vis-a-vis Europe. And by the way, we don't blame, for example, the Germans for pursuing a policy that makes their exporters strong. We just wish that American leadership had pursued a policy that made our exporters strong, because now we find ourselves in a very precarious place. And when I say we, I mean the entire West. I mean the NATO alliance. I mean the United States and Europe, which is that we become, in a world of hyper-complicated, hyper-globalized supply chains, we find ourselves more and more reliant on countries that may not have our best interests at heart. And even if they're halfway decent trading partners, it's still a little bit risky to put all of your eggs in one proverbial basket economically. And what the president has said is we must rebalance the global economy vis-a-vis China. We cannot absorb hundreds of billions of dollars, close to $1 trillion per year in annual surplus, most of it coming from the People's Republic of China. And what that's going to mean in the rebalancing is that we think that the PRC is going to have to, frankly, let their own population consume a little bit more. They've held consumption levels down in order to increase these massive exports. It means that American manufacturers are going to have to be treated more fairly in some of these global trade deals. It means we're going to have to cut some new trade deals with some of our friends in Europe, but also with some of our more adversarial nations. But that also, we have to be careful here, because while we want to rebalance global trade, and that has certainly been the explicit goal of our policy, we also want to make sure that we do this in the right way. And yes, you've seen media reports that the Chinese reached out to the United States. Of course, we're going to sit down and talk to them. I'm not going to divulge too many details or prejudge the negotiations, but we want to rebalance trade in the interests of American workers, in the interests of American manufacturers. That is our policy. We think that we can do that while preserving at least an open dialogue with the PRC and with a lot of other nations all over the world. But that doesn't mean the old way of doing business is going to be stable or that it's going to persist. It simply cannot. It was not sustainable 10 years ago. It was certainly not sustainable 4 years ago, and we're very, very committed to changing it. But we're open to having conversations with both, again, our friends and more adversarial nations about what that rebalancing ultimately looks like. And people have to remember, Liberation Day, which was where the president announced this fundamental change, I think, in the global trading system, that was almost exactly 30 days ago. So we are in the early innings of a very significant shift. I think that shift is going to really inure to the benefit of both the United States but also of Europe. But it's fundamentally, it has to happen, and it's going to happen under President Trump's leadership. All
right. I think it's great if there are beginning discussions between you and the Chinese. Could you expand a little more on what would your expectations be for an EU-US successful discussion of these trade issues? Is there any message that we can take home to our friends in Brussels? Because that's also, from our point of view, obviously a very urgent issue.
Yeah, so to put it very simply, and we've obviously had great conversations with a lot of our European friends at the very senior levels between the president and heads of state, between me and officials in European governments, but also with trade representatives and also the very nitty-gritty technical details of a trade agreement. So these conversations are ongoing. But I'll throw a few general principles out there. I think the first is that, again, America wants its exporters and by implication its workers to be treated much more fairly. We want American markets, in the same way that American markets have been open to a lot of European goods, we'd like a lot of European markets to be open to American goods. Now there's an agriculture component to that, there's a value-added manufacturing component to that. We think that we have, in both the software but also the more harder technology side, we have some great defense technology firms where, on the one hand, we have our European friends saying we want to actually build up our defense, we want to do more burden sharing, but on the other hand, it seems like some of our European friends are less open for business if the people selling software and hardware are American firms. Well, we think that's inconsistent. We think that we have some of the best military hardware and software in the world, and we think part of being good allies is, yes, we obviously want the Europeans to take a bigger role in the continental defense, but we also think that there are a lot of great American companies that they can work with. And so, again, this doesn't have to be a zero-sum dynamic. This can be a very synergistic relationship, but the fundamental principle is we think that most nations in the world have been way too hard on American exporters and American firms. We want to make the entire world a little bit more open to the products built by American workers. We're obviously biased. We think that they're the best in the world, and we think that we can have a much better trading relationship with a lot of our European friends if they just drop some of those both tariff but also non-tariff trade barriers. There are regulatory barriers. There are sometimes you have an official at the Ministry of Defense completely disconnected, as far as we can tell, from an actual law or regulation who will just say, we're not buying American products.
Right.
Sometimes you have officials in Europe who will say, well, we're going to penalize American technology firms in a way that we would never penalize European technology firms. We just want a little bit more fairness, or to use the president's favorite word, reciprocity. And again, with Europe, we think that's a very, very easy conversation to have. We hope our European friends agree.
Great. I get signs from my friend here that we're quickly running out of time.
Well, I'm having fun.
Okay.
And we can take a few more questions.
Okay, great, wonderful.
My team over there is very nervous. You guys can't see them behind, but
we'll be brief.
Please.
So thank you very much. We've heard that there is, in coming days or next 2 weeks, a presidential trip to the Middle East coming up.
Sure.
Among the many unresolved issues of that region is the issue of Iran and their nuclear ambition, et cetera, et cetera. Could you talk a little bit about the region? I mean, there's so many unresolved issues, the Gaza issue, but also Tehran. What would your expectation be? What would the goal be? Would you go for zero enrichment by Iran? Some people have suggested that. Or are we looking at a replay of the earlier, agreement that was reached 10 years ago?
Yeah. So there are a couple issues with the earlier agreement. The JCPOA,
right,
as it's called here in the United States, and I assume in Europe. But here the two big issues with that agreement are, number one, the enforcement or the inspections regime was incredibly weak. And I don't think that it actually served the function of preventing the Iranians from getting on the pathway to a nuclear weapon. That's one thing that must be different. And then second, yes, we believe that there were some elements of their nuclear program that were preserved under JCPOA that, yes, they weren't nuclear weapons. Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon, but allowed Iran to sort of stay on this glide path towards a nuclear weapon if they flip the switch and press go. And we have to think about this not just in terms of Iran, which, again, the president has said this. We think that there is a deal here that would reintegrate Iran into the global economy, that would be really good for the Iranian people, but would result in the complete cessation of any chance that they can get a nuclear weapon. And that's what we're negotiating towards. And as the president has said, that's option A. And option B, if option A is very good for the Iranian people and even some of the folks, the leadership in Iran, option B is very bad. It's very bad for everybody, and it's not what we want, but it's better than option C, which is Iran getting a nuclear weapon. That is what is completely off the table for the American administration. No ifs, ands, or buts. Now, there are a couple of other things that are worth thinking about, because this is not just about Iran. If Iran gets a nuclear weapon, which country then next gets a nuclear weapon? And then when that country gets a nuclear weapon, which country after that? We really care not just about Iran, but about nuclear proliferation. And the president said this in an interview a few weeks ago. It's one of these things that in the maelstrom of the media, the signal and the noise, this was very much signal, but it got lost in the noise. The president hates nuclear proliferation. I hate nuclear proliferation. And I think that the president would be very open to sitting down with the Russians and the Chinese and saying, look, let's get this thing in a much better place. Let's reduce the number of nuclear weapons that are in the world writ large. That's obviously not a conversation for tomorrow. That's a conversation, God willing, for a few years from now. But there is no way you get to that conversation if you allow multiple regimes all over the world to basically enter this sprint for a nuclear weapon. And we really think that if the Iran domino falls, you're going to see nuclear proliferation all over the Middle East. That's very bad for us. It's very bad for our friends. And it's something that we don't think can happen. So without prejudging the negotiations, I will say so far so good. We've been very happy by how the Iranians have responded to some of the points that we've made. We've been very happy that some of the intermediaries and some of the folks who are in the room, the role that they played, the Omanis in particular, have played a very positive role, and we're very grateful to that. So far, we're on the right pathway, but this is going to end somewhere. And it will end either in Iran eliminating their nuclear program, their nuclear weapons program. They can have civil nuclear power. Okay, we don't mind that, but let me ask this basic question. Which regime in the world has civil nuclear power and enrichment without having a nuclear weapon? And the answer is no one. No one right now has a civil nuclear program with their entire enrichment infrastructure that can enrich to the 90+% needed to get to fissile material and a nuclear weapon. So our proposition is very simple. Yes, we don't care if people want nuclear power. We're fine with that, but you can't have the kind of enrichment program that allows you to get to a nuclear weapon, and that's where we draw the line.
Great. I think most of us would totally agree with that, and especially, I think, speaking on behalf of a non-nuclear country, with the goal of maintaining the nuclear non-proliferation regime.
Yes.
That's very important. That allows me to turn to my next or last question on NATO, because most people don't understand that the fact that we've had NATO under U.S. leadership for the last 70 years, that has been an essential instrument of international non-proliferation. Yes. If we had not had the U.S. nuclear presence in Europe, I would be prepared to give you at least 2, 3, 4, 5 countries in Europe that would have gone nuclear if they had not had this reassurance. Sure. So NATO has played a big role in nuclear non-proliferation. In 6 weeks' time, we have a NATO summit coming up. And again, there are many issues. One will be the continuing issue of defense spending. As we mentioned earlier in our discussion, Europeans are doing more, but we've also listened to demands coming out of the administration that are even more ambitious. So could you talk a little bit about your level of expectation? What would be your desired outcome of that NATO summit in terms of defense spending, in terms of how much Europe will need to do on its own in order to relieve the United States more in Europe?
Yeah, so I think there are a couple of different components to this. So first of all, what the president has said is he'd like to see 5% spending on defense in NATO. And he thinks that is consistent with what our European friends are telling us about how much they fear some of the threats in the world. And, given, unfortunately, that a lot of European militaries have not kept pace over the past few decades, there's a bit of catching up to do. And so that is the goal that the president has set. Obviously, the European countries are going to make their own determinations, but that's what we think is a reasonable goal. But it's really not just about the spend itself. It's also how the money is spent. And it's, again, there's this fear that we have when we look at some of our European friends, and I made this point at the first Munich Security Conference I ever went to, that when I looked at Germany 10, 15, 20 years ago, one of the things that the Germans were very good about is that they had kept the industrial strength of their economy consistent with the first world standard of living. But now what we see in Europe is a lot of our European friends are deindustrializing at the very moment where we're all seeing the hard power underpinning, or the economic underpinning of real hard power requires very strong and powerful industry. And so it's not just spending money, as important as that is, it's making sure that the same economic engine that powered first world living standards is actually geared towards producing, God forbid, weapons of war if those weapons of war are ever necessary. And so I think there's both an economic component to this that's completely divorced from the spending levels, and then of course there's the spending levels too. But we really want and we really care about Europe being self-sufficient. I gave an interview a couple of weeks ago where I actually tried to make the point that, yes, we're going to have disagreements with Europe, and Europe will have disagreements with us. Sometimes, I would hearken back to 2003 United States policy in the Middle East. I frankly wish we had listened to our European friends. But I think this is an area where we're fundamentally right, and I think it's gratifying to see so many of our European friends recognize that, and recognize that Europe does really have to play a bigger role in continental defense. I think we're all aligned on it. It's just a question of getting there, and most importantly, getting there quickly.
There is a glimmer of hope in our country, in Germany. As I'm sure you've seen, we've eliminated the so-called debt brake when it comes to defense spending. So there is now the opportunity for the incoming new government in Germany to spend significantly more. In other words, I think we're in good shape in terms of responding to what you have just said. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of this wonderful discussion. I'm really grateful to you that you allowed this to be a Q&A session.
Sure.
We could continue this, I'm sure, for the rest of the morning, but I know you have other things coming up. May I simply conclude by saying that we hope very much, my team and I, that you will be willing and prepared to continue this young tradition that the United States at major Munich Security Conference events will be represented at your level. You are not the first Vice President of the United States who has come to the Munich Security Conference, but we are extremely grateful that you came in your new position. Please come again to Munich next year. Thank you very much, Mr. Vice President.
Thank you. So if I may just say a few things in conclusion. First of all, I appreciate the kind words, and I appreciate the invitation back. I wasn't sure after February whether I'd get the invitation back, but it's good to know that it's still there.
Well, we thought about it.
Second of all, since you brought up Germany, I wanted to, of course, from the President, issue our congratulations to Chancellor Merz. And I know that we'll have a conversation with him in the next couple of days, but we're looking forward to it. And the final point that I'd make is not to rehash what's in that document, but one of the things that I said in that speech that didn't get as much airplay, but I thought was just as important, is that everything that I said there applied as much to the previous American administration as it did any government in Europe. Oh. And I think that this, I mean this from the heart and as a friend, that there is a trade-off between policing the bounds of democratic speech and debate and losing the trust of our people. Every single country, and we're all going to draw the lines a little bit differently, every single country says there are things that are outside the realm of political debate. I understand that, I accept that, and I'm fine if one country is going to draw those lines a little bit differently than the United States. But I think all of us, including especially the United States, we have to be careful that we don't draw the lines in such a way that we actually undermine the very democratic legitimacy upon which all of our civilization rests. And I think that is fundamentally the point here. It's not Europe bad, America good. It's that I think that both Europe and the United States, we got a little bit off track, and I'd encourage us all to get back on track together. We're certainly willing and able to participate in that work, and I think all of you all too. Thank you. God bless you.
Great. Thank you so much.
All right, so the Vice President wrapping up his Q&A with the Munich Security Conference meeting in Washington, D.C. Speaking of the Vice President, he and his wife Usha just went to the Marine Barracks to check out the Marine Band over the weekend. The Vice President also posted that video before we end our broadcast. Take a look. All right, they're saying it's not ready yet, but we'll get to that in just a second. Let's thank some sponsors as well. We'll be thanking the Colonial Metals Group. freegoldguide.com/RSBN is one of our great sponsors here. Also, All Family Pharmacy, allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN, another great sponsor. We'll be talking about these sponsors throughout the day. A lot of live coverage coming up. Also, mypillow.com/RSBN. Great Mike Lindell, of course, mypillow.com/RSBN. The Percale bed sheets closeout sale, $25 a pop. Great stuff there at mypillow.com. All right, so we have a lot of live coverage coming up, including a speech or a press conference with the DOJ and the FBI. So Pam Bondi and Kash Patel at 10:30. Check out that live stream in just a second. And then later at 1 o'clock, we'll have the press conference with the White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt. Our show will start at 12 o'clock. So check out all the listings on Rumble and everywhere you watch, YouTube and other places, to see all the live coverage. In the meantime, let's go to that video with the Vice President just from over the weekend.
Good evening and welcome to the oldest post of the Corps, Marine Barracks, Washington, D.C., celebrating over 6 decades of performing evening parades here in our nation's capital. It is a privilege for Marine Barracks, Washington, D.C. to have as our guest of honor for this evening, the Vice President of the United States, the Honorable JD Vance. Tonight, we celebrate the pride, professionalism, and esprit de corps that are hallmarks of this barracks and the Marines who have distinguished these hallowed grounds for over 2 centuries. They represent all Marines throughout the world who embody our Corps' values of honor, courage, and commitment.
So if you ever get a chance, if you're in Washington, D.C., you check out the Marine Barracks, Washington. The Marine Band will do an evening parade. It's pretty awesome to check it out. I've done that in the past, and the Vice President there as well. So when you get a chance, if you're in Washington, check that out, the Marine Barracks in Washington, D.C. Okay, so the next live stream is about to start. That will be for the DOJ, FBI, both top leaders there will be sharing some information with us. No details yet on what it's about, so we'll get some more information on that. I will say this before I let you go, that Pam Bondi was asked just minutes ago outside the White House about the Epstein files. She says the FBI is still reviewing tens of thousands of files and that there are hundreds of victims. So that from Pam Bondi just moments ago outside the White House. Meantime, we'll see you on the next live stream broadcast for the FBI DOJ presser, and then we'll have the 12 o'clock start time for the White House press briefing with Carolyn Leavitt, and we're just getting started. There's more live coverage later today. Robert McNeely will be here as well. So for all of us at Right Side, I'm Matthew Alvarez. We'll see you in a second.
Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, your trusted conservative news outlet. At RSBN, we deliver the truth when the mainstream media falls short. Since 2015, we've proudly broadcasted every single one of President Trump's iconic MAGA rallies, bringing you the excitement and energy live before anyone else. By watching RSBN, you get an unfiltered front row view of the action on the ground. We interview the crowds to give a voice to millions of Americans just like you. We show you President Trump's speeches in their entirety, free from interruptions and censorship. We cover the stories that matter to you with the integrity and passion you deserve. Thank you for choosing RSBN as your home for America First News. Together, we stand strong, united, and informed, so join us and be part of the right side of history.
You've heard how hard it can be to get access to medications like ivermectin, all the things they don't want you to take because they're actually effective and they don't cost all that much, right? You've seen that one before. So it's critical to have something like that on hand for any emergency and to be prepared in a time of crisis. And that's why I want to tell you about All Family Pharmacy. They're cutting through the nonsense, and they make it easy to get hard-to-find medications when you need them most. They'll provide the prescription, no hoops to jump through, no waiting room, no hassle, and they deliver it right to your door. All Family Pharma even lets you order in bulk so you can stay ahead of the curve. Head over to allfamilypharmacy.com for 10% off your first order. Again, allfamilypharmacy.com. It's simple. Get the 10% savings. Be prepared.
President Trump is keeping his promises and saving America. And your kids can learn all about it for free with a new Kids Guide to President Trump. This fun guide shows kids all the steps President Trump is taking to put America back on top of the world stage, including building a strong economy, protecting our borders, and negotiating trade deals. It's an exciting way for kids to learn about President Trump's outstanding leadership. Act now and get a free bonus guide, The Courage of the President. Order now at freetrumpbook.com. That's freetrumpbook.com.
Hey y'all, it's Silk from the Diamond and Silk Chit Chat live show. Look, don't forget to check me out right here on RSBN Network. Be sure to watch the show on Right Side Broadcasting Network, and I want you to support Right Side Broadcasting Network. Yes, it's imperative that you do so, okay? I look to see y'all soon. Bye-bye.
Hello, everyone. I'm excited to announce the next generation of energy drinks, Rev 7. It has no sugar and no caffeine. Instead, Rev 7 uses Go BHB. Go BHB is one of the body's primary ketones, and it provides the most efficient and clean fuel that your body needs. It also helps you stay energized all day with no crashes. Not only that, it produces 3 times more brain energy than sugar, which helps boost your memory, focus, and mental sharpness. It also helps reduce stress and helps balance your mood. Rev 7 does all that while being the best tasting energy drink ever. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% today. I'm so sure you're going to love Rev 7. For a limited time, you get our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. I drink Rev 7 every day, and I absolutely love it, and so will you.